Okay, BESE members, we're going to go ahead and get started. I know it looks like everybody's having a lot of fun chatting, but I think we'll have more fun if we get out of here. You with me? Okay. Can we get a roll call, please?
Dr. Beebe? Present. Dr. Beebe is present. Ms. Bofi? Here. Ms. Bofi is present. Ms. Bradford? Here. Ms. Bradford is present. Mr. Garvey?
Here.
Mr. Garvey is present. Mr. Guillot?
Present.
Mr. Guillot is present. Ms. Harris?
Here.
Ms. Harris is present. Ms. Hill?
Present.
Ms. Hill is present. Dr. Moranti? Dr. Moranti is present. Ms. Orange-Jones?
Present.
Ms. Orange-Jones is present. Mr. Romer?
Here.
Mr. Romer is present. Ms. Smith?
Here.
Ms. Smith is present. You have quorum.
Okay, can we have the first item, please?
I just want to note that you all have folders at the dais that have all the new exec recs and backup relative to the items that we're waiting for after the packets were printed. So please refer to those when asked. Item 2.1 on page 1, consideration of a report on types 2, 4, and 5 charter contracts and requests for amendments. The department recommendation is to approve 1 and 2.
Okay, can we get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Ms. Bofi, second by Ms. Bradford. Do we have any questions about the new backup? Hearing none, do we have any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Next item.
Next item is on page 7. Item 2.2, consideration of the request for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Charter School to transfer to the jurisdiction of the Orleans Parish School Board at the conclusion of the 2014-15 school year. The new recommendation is to defer this item.
Okay, Ms. Bradford, second by Ms. Bofi. Do we have any questions on this item?
May I ask what?
We just are working on the details of their charter contract. We just haven't finished it yet. We're working with the Orleans Parish School Board. We have every intention for this school to go back. We just haven't finalized the arrangement yet.
But you had initially approved.
Well, we initially approved the school to get a new contract, so that's first step. Second step is you approved for them to start discussions with OPSB about going back. Then they have to come back to us with a contract they finalized with OPSB. You approve that. They just haven't done that yet, and we're still working with them. I think we're all working in good faith. We're going to get there.
Okay, any other questions? Do we have any objections to the motion? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item.
Next item is on page 9, item 2.3, consideration of the renewal of the charter contract for Lagniappe Academies of New Orleans and the request from Lagniappe Academy of New Orleans Charter School Board to seek to transfer to the jurisdiction of the Orleans Parish School Board at the conclusion of the 2014-15 school year. The recommendation is to, number 1, approve the department recommendation for a non-renewal, and number 2, deny the transfer request.
So moved.
Ms. Boatley, Ms. Jones? Do we have any questions from BESE members?
I'm just going to make a couple of comments, if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask Superintendent Dobard to provide details. I will just tell you that what we have, as you may have seen in the report, is what our assessment during the renewal process is. And this is not a discontinuation of a charter school. This is just a decision you have as to whether to renew. That we think we have a pattern of incompetence in this school, and we think it's over a sustained enough period of time and over multiple incidents such that we don't believe we should grant the request to sustain the school. So you're not interrupting the school, you're not discontinuing the school. They have come to us saying we want to continue, and you are saying, we are asking you to say, no, we don't think that's appropriate. I'll ask Superintendent Dobard to fill in the details.
Thank you, Superintendent, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Patrick Dobard, Superintendent, Recovery School District. And says that, as Superintendent White said, we followed the request of the board and did a deeper dive. Ms. Orange-Jones asked us to do a deeper dive. And as we received all the evidence from various individuals and seeing the report that was put together on Lagniappe, we lost confidence and shared that with the department in the school's ability to continue to go forward. And for the Recovery School District, this is really an issue of equity. And I just want to point out to the board members that starting in 2012, the RSD, we established processes that allowed us to track student movement to make sure that across schools that students and schools could not push students out, and that everyone was going to serve all students in New Orleans. And so we were very forward-thinking and progressive in creating our central enrollment system. In 2013, with the guidance of the Department of Ed, we created a charter school performance compact that really spells out explicit consequences for those schools that fail to meet standards. And we interact with schools and monitor regularly using that charter school performance compact. And lastly, with the support of the board and the department, we've raised academic standards when schools are going through their charter renewal process. And so we've put processes in place, and we implement our processes very well. And the strong accountability that this board has established for schools, particularly our charter schools in New Orleans, today we come to you with this recommendation and hopeful support of non-renewal, because we have to make certain that we always protect our most neediest students. And when we know that you have the report, we looked at it that through that our commitment is to making sure that we have all the structures and systems in place, that all of our students are going to receive the quality education that they deserve. We're continuously developing our system to ensure equity. In every Type 5 charter, as you are aware, are their own independent LEA. So each charter school has the legal responsibility to be fully open enrollment and comply with special education law just like any school district would. And so that all of our students in schools and making sure that they're following this in New Orleans is extremely important and beyond. And we want to make certain that they're requiring that all students receive all services by the students according to the student's IEP, and that the school provide evaluations to students who are suspected of having a disability or have had their parents request for an evaluation. And I would say overwhelmingly schools in the RSD take on and embrace these requirements. And they all know that it's an honor and privilege to serve our children. And so this one particular school is I think, the anomaly of our system of schools. I think all of our educators want to do best for our families and children. But in this particular instance, there's just too much systemic proof and just urgent concern on our part that we couldn't in good faith to support a recommendation other than non-renewal. I won't go into any more details on that, but I just wanted to make sure that you were fully aware that we believe, and it's not just something that we say as far as like our commitment to excellence, equity, and community. Those aren't just things that we take lightly. It's what we live by. It's what we've established our system to be based upon. And I'm very proud of our team to lay the infrastructure that we can and work and enforce those things. And I'm very proud of the majority of our schools that continue to live by that. And so while we feel very strongly that we are in the right place, we will be very understanding. I have talked to parents today at Lanyap. I'm going to meet with them personally on Monday, depending on the wishes of the board, and make certain that we walk them through the process of what's next. And one of those things was we are extending the main round for one app, so that they'll have another week or so to be able to they will get priority preference. No school student right now will have preference or priority over them because we haven't closed it yet. It will still be open just for the Lanyap students. And so we're making that accommodation. Again, I will personally meet with families, and my team will, and we're going to be on hand to walk them through this and help them be able to pursue other options. And so I'm happy to answer any questions, and we have staff on hand that also has helped greatly to put this report together and be able to give this back to you.
Mr. Garvey,
Ms.
for clar-
Beebe?
I'm sorry.
Superintendent Doborn. So this charter school, the grade is C, and I know all the other concerns, but I just want to ask this question. So because it was a C, that they were in the process of wanting to return to the Orleans Parish School?
Prior to this report, their board initially voted to stay with the Recovery School District. And then we started where we were a little bit further in, and once we gave preliminary understanding in the board, I believe, made the request, they subsequently called a special board meeting, I believe it was like at the very end of December, and they took another vote to decide to return back to OPSB. And so, yes, they did apply to return to OPSB, but only after they initially took a vote to stay with the Recovery School District.
So some of the concerns that I know it was publicized in a paper, newspaper. When was it disclosed to you? Because you're superintendent, don't you have the oversight or monitoring of that school? I'm asking the question.
It was disclosed to the department's staff, so late September, and we immediately went into action starting in late September, and I can give you the full timeline. But former staff members from Lanyap contacted the Department of Ed staff, and that set off a series of events. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you satisfied my question?
Okay.
Mr. Garvey, just for clarification, in the folder we were given, I think this is the most update. It has an approve and deny on the recommendation. That's accurate?
It's approved the department's recommendation to not renew
Okay.
and deny the request to transfer.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, do we have any objections to the motion? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item.
Next item is on page 16, item 3.1, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 126, charter schools regarding charter school growth plans and transportation. The department recommendation is to approve as a notice of intent.
Okay. Can we get a motion to that effect? Mr. Gio, second. By Ms. Bophy. Do we have any questions from BESE members?
Members, I just want to summarize very briefly these policies. These are revisions to the same bulletin, both having to do with charter schools. One does the following. It puts into place specific performance standards for the automatic growth clause in the law, where the law allows for a high-performing charter group to automatically grow, provided that you have granted them charters. This puts into place standards for kind of triggering them to do that. We wouldn't want us to have granted charters, turns out that their schools haven't done very well, and they can still just automatically jump into action. Secondly, and probably a little bit more complicated, is charter school transportation. And this specifically regards Type 2 charter schools. I want to tell you that Type 5 charter schools, the other type that you authorize, they are already required by law to provide transportation. And the vast majority of Type 2 charter schools already do provide transportation within their parishes. There are a small number of schools that don't provide transportation. And as we have placed some Type 2 charter schools in cities like Lake Charles and Lafayette, you have one or two schools then within the parish that don't provide transportation. That seems to us to not provide families who have access outside of, who are located outside of the proximity to the school. It doesn't give them access to the school. And I believe that the intention under the law and the practice of this board has been to try to grant access, especially to low-income individuals, to our charter schools. Thus, we support transportation. However, I am sensitive, and I think we all should be, to the fact that charter schools also are not to be over-regulated entities. They're supposed to be the leading edge of innovation and not over-regulated. And thus, we should look at situations where there are financial burdens that are too great for an individual school to sustain a transportation burden. And let me just give you an example. We have schools in, I believe it's Mr. Romer's and certainly Dr. Beebe's district and maybe Ms. Hill's, that serve exclusively students who are classified as having needs under the 504 section of federal law. That's an extremely burdensome financial requirement. That might not allow for a school to provide transportation as an additional burden. Also, you can't expect a school not providing transportation right now to immediately flip and change the way they do their budgeting. We have thus proposed, one, that the superintendent have a waiver policy where for financial hardship the superintendent can waive this provision, and second, that there be a 3-year phase-in so that schools not have to immediately turn around and change their financial planning in order to accommodate this provision. We believe in it because of access, but we think it's important to be sensitive to the needs of individual schools that don't have a full financial school board's backing in order to budget. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Particularly glad to hear you said that you were sensitive about placing additional requirements on charter schools, because I am too, and concerns me greatly. Do we have any other questions from BESE members?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Beebe?
Superintendent White, I can appreciate your comments, but, when considering fairness, we could say the same thing about our traditional schools, particularly with, we just talked about the MFP. I mean, we could all be in this situation, so are we going to be afforded the same opportunity within our traditional systems
The same opportunity.
for a waiver of transportation? I mean,
Well, that's the law, unfortunately. There's not that kind of waiver available. I would say that I think there's one difference, and that is that we don't have school systems that just have one school. And that makes the economies of scale for a remote charter school or one that is serving a particularly costly student population. I think that makes it particularly challenging. But, I hope you sense that we're moving in the direction of full equity across our schools, and that's the nature of this policy.
Mr. Romer?
I do want to point out, I think about 70% of the Type 2s do currently provide some transportation. So I want to put it in context that most of them actually are already meeting this policy. We're just looking forward on how best can this policy be met for everyone. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, the significant majority of them already do provide transportation.
Okay, we have some speakers. Julie Rodriguez, Veronica Brooks, and Ben Clavin.
Hello, I'm Julie Rodriguez. I'm with North Shore Charter School in Bogalusa, Louisiana. And our school, I was hired 2 years ago to begin the process of starting a school. And my board very much wanted to serve as many vulnerable students as they could. And so we chose to make sure we did provide transportation for our students. It's been great for us. We wouldn't have the enrollment we have without that. And some of the most vulnerable kids would not be able to be served in our school. For me personally, last year, all the staff members, we rode bus in rotation so that we got to know our families a little better. This year, I have parents who serve as bus monitors, and so it helps with that connection as well. But it helps make sure that we're serving the population that we were brought aboard to serve and make sure that all kids have that ability to come if they choose to. Thank you.
Members, I can just tell you that this board was the board that authorized Julie's school, and I've been to the school in Bogalusa. It's an area where there hasn't historically been school choice. Now there is that option, and they're serving a very challenging student population and doing so very well. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Brooks?
Hi, Veronica Brooks with the Charter School Association. I wanted to actually address both parts of the policy, if you don't mind. The first piece, according to regulations, charter schools should meet certain requirements before they are allowed to grow and open subsequent schools. And so we just wanted to let you know that we do support the proposed standards. We believe they reflect a level of quality and rigor that our students really deserve. We have always and will always support charter school autonomy. But that has to be in exchange for accountability. And so we really believe that these standards meet that need for accountability and will help lead to excellent schools regardless of where students are coming from. As it relates to the transportation policy, we echo your sentiment, Mr. Garvey, in terms of believing in charter school autonomy, but we also really believe that that autonomy has to be balanced with equity. And when families and students want to attend a charter school, they should be able to do that with as few barriers to access as possible. And we really believe that transportation shouldn't be one of those barriers. As was mentioned already, all the Type 5 charter schools do provide transportation. About 65% of the Type 2s already do. And while we recognize that it can be a heavy burden financially, I think it's usually somewhere around $700 per student. The Department of Education has really done a good job, in our opinion, of providing the flexibility that is needed and making sure that charter schools can do that in a way that meets both their needs but also their students' needs. So we appreciate the thoughtfulness that was put into this policy.
Mr. Clayton?
I'm Ben Cleveland. I'm the CEO of New Orleans College Prep. We operate 3 Type 5 charter schools in New Orleans. I just want to express my support for these standards and this policy. And I know the LDE has consulted both myself and many of my colleagues to ensure that the higher standards for what criteria are in place to consider expansion of a charter school organization are both fair and ambitious. And I think this policy meets those requirements. And lastly, I would just say, while we have occasionally examples of schools, charter schools in particular, that have not met the mark of their responsibilities for serving all kids, there are many charter schools throughout New Orleans and throughout the state that hold themselves to legal and moral and ethical standards for serving all children to the best of their abilities, regardless of whether there's somebody looking over our shoulder. And so we stand here today welcoming additional accountability because we already placed that on ourselves. And I appreciate your support for moving forward on these policies.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions from BESE members? We have a motion on the floor. Do we have any objections to the motion? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item.
That concludes the agenda.
Thank you.